Hello, everybody. I did not forget how to do a live, although, I had to kind of refresh myself after a few weeks off, but just running a little bit behind from some great client sessions this morning. So thanks for your patience as we log on live here at 12. I always promise that, but sometimes can't quite deliver, but that's life, right? So I'm really excited to be back with you guys today. Like I said, if you've been following along on my stories, I've just gotten back from a beautiful 2-week European adventure with my husband. It was definitely a bucket list trip for us, and we saw so many amazing places, and I got tons of, like I said, likes and comments and feedback. So if you're interested in what we did, what we saw, itinerary, or anything like that, always happy to share. It was great. I can't say I'm a professional. I won't take credit for planning that trip. Shout out to Sarah at Those Who Wander Travel. If you're looking for someone to hook you up, she's your girl for sure. But today I just kind of wanted to catch up because, like I said, it's been a few weeks here. Most of the month of May was kind of a hiatus from doing our Learn with Flow lives and just kind of like traveling and all the fun stuff that May can kind of provide for us in a busy month. So this will be a little bit more of an informal kind of chatty day in the life with me. Dumping some Learn with Flow thoughts as I get back from trip and just kind of giving you guys the lowdown, right? Which I always do. So I would say the first things first, things that I wanted to kind of announce on in case you missed it. All of these Learn with Flow are stored under my Reels tab of the Instagram page, right? So a lot of times people kind of always ask, they're like, oh my gosh, I missed your Learn with Flow live. And like, is there a way I can rewatch it and kind of see it again? Yes, you can always go under my Reels and they will stay recorded under there. But I also know that the Instagram live scenario, recording it and going back and trying to replay it, is a little bit annoying because how Instagram has it set up right now is you start it and you have to kind of watch it through entirety. There's no ability to like scroll ahead, scroll backward. You're like in it to win it once you're in it. And then if you exit out of it and try to come back to it, you can't just pick up where you left off. You have to like rewatch it all, which is super annoying in the world of just like content consuming. And I know that as a consumer, and I can probably feel that on that side too. So a big project that I've been working on behind the scenes with these Learn with Flow episodes is transitioning all of them over to YouTube. So it's a process. There's a lot more episodes than I thought there were, which is great. It means that there's this huge bank of episodes that we can go back to. And I think the YouTube platform is going to make them a lot more searchable, searchable by topic, searchable by keyword. They're also numbered now. So if I refer to a certain like episode number, you can always go back to that particular episode number, right? So when I first started the Learn with Flow, I wasn't thinking that far ahead in terms of how much amazing feedback I would get from this type of content or exactly where I wanted to go with it. I'll be honest, it was probably kind of dipping my toes in the water of the podcasting world and starting to really come to understand like, what do I like? How do I like to deliver information? I, at the heart, love to educate. That's like, that is my passion, right? Everything that comes out really just comes from a heart of just getting information out there, things that I'm super stoked and passionate about, things that I feel like people aren't talking enough about, big gaps, especially in the world of nutrition and functional medicine and chronic disease management, like big gaps that I feel like our world hasn't yet filled. And I'm like, information, like let's educate the masses, right? In whatever regard that looks like. So I really love this Learn with Flow platform. I see myself continuing to do this Learn with Flow platform. So have no fear. It's just a matter of where the landing place might be, of where it's easiest to search for you guys, best consumable, broadest reach, so that I can really help as many people as possible with this type of content, right? And engage with you guys and answer a lot of your questions. So I just say that because I am about, I think, successfully have 42 of the Learn with Flow episodes uploaded to my YouTube page. So you can find me the Lowdown Nutrition on YouTube. You can search the Learn with Flow and go back to any of those 42 videos that I have recorded up until this point. There's I think I just counted. I think I have at least 25 more to go, so I'm over halfway. And that will just be a continual project of uploading those to YouTube so that you guys can watch them easier. So if you're new to Learn with Flow and you haven't watched past episodes, I would definitely go to my YouTube page to find those. I think it's going to be easiest. But you can also always view them under the Reels tab. If you're a longtime consumer and longtime listener of the Learn with Flow episodes, then you know that you can always now go to my YouTube page because it's going to be a lot easier to navigate than the Reels section. So for all of you OG listeners that have been around the Learn with Flow now for, I think, like I said, I counted like 70 some episodes. That's amazing. And now I made it even easier for you guys because you guys were the ones that put up with some of the technology of having to rewatch it on the Instagram platform. So kudos to you, right? But now we're on YouTube, so make sure you see those there. The other big thing that I really wanted to discuss today too was, like I said, with this more informal kind of just chatty Learn with Flow style, is really coming back from my European trip. I ironically had a couple clients that were traveling to Europe kind of around the same time or within, we weren't there at the exact same times. That would have been fun, but kind of traveling around the same time. And every time that I'm talking to clients like post vacation mode, I find myself kind of prompting with some of the similar questions. And I wanted to let you guys in on some of those behind the scenes questions and conversations I have with clients because I feel like they get a lot out of it, and it's usually not a direction they thought I was going to ask them post-vacation, and it's also taking you guys through the process of my own self-reflection and why I love traveling so much, is because it gives me such a unique perspective to be able to ask and kind of ponder some of these questions, right? So something I really wanted to dive into today was some of the things I kind of noticed about my European adventures, things that I always am looking at in terms of how do other cultures navigate food? How do other cultures navigate agriculture? How do they navigate work-life balance? How do they navigate, stress and connection with nature? Or what does their healthcare system look like, right? It's like, some people are like, no, I'm just here for the food and like the beaches, and I'm always there. I'm like, what are they doing? Like, how do you live like a local here, right? Because I think that every culture really does give us a lot of learning and a lot of insights if we're willing to kind of branch out and kind of see like, what are they really doing well? What do I feel like I'm doing well? And we can kind of share insights into that as well. So something that I always dive into with clients, because I do this myself, right? I'm not going to walk my clients through a practice that I don't also do or haven't walked through myself. And as part of the kind of post-vacation reflection that I think is always really important is, what were some of the big things that you learned from your time in whatever culture you were at? And what are some things that you want to bring into your day-to-day life now, right? Because I think definitely as Americans, but I honestly just think as like the hustle and grind culture that we live in today, there's so much emphasis that we like work for 50 weeks a year at a job that we hate and we're miserable at, and then but we get these like 2 weeks a year of reprieve, right? And it's like we're counting down the days to vacation, and it's like it can't come fast enough. It's like we're wishing our life away and counting down to these vacations, right? And I'm not saying that I don't also do the same thing. Of course, I put them on the books and then I'm looking forward to them. I'm getting ready for them. But when I zoom out, I'm like, that's not right, right? Like, why are we living a life where 50 weeks out of a year we feel miserable, we feel fatigued, we feel tired, we feel burnt out, we feel unfulfilled, right? We feel like we're like wishing time away, right? For these like 2 weeks of like freedom, right? And I'm not saying that it's going to be exactly the same, but I feel like, why do we have to work 50 weeks a year feeling so miserable? What are some things that we can learn about our life on vacation, and even in micro moments, can we bring those back to our everyday reality, right? Like micro moments, right? So some of the things that I really always like kind of reflect on is specifically like, or I guess specifically in this European adventure, a lot of people are like, well, what did you notice over there? Like, what did you think about the food? What did you think about the culture? And I will say that there was some really eye-opening things that I think I didn't really expect. Let's start kind of with like the bad, I guess you could call it the bad, right? I would say I was really, really shocked at how many Europeans smoked. I have no idea why that took me off guard. Maybe because like living where I do, there's so many like public smoking restrictions that I'm just not used to it, right? I'm not used to being around cigarette smoke and like sitting next to somebody in a street cafe and the 3 out of the 4 tables surrounding us are like chain smoking through cigarettes on their lunch, right? I'm like, that's really odd. So that was kind of one thing I'm like, oh, that's interesting, that's still very much a part of their culture. They also, I noticed a lot around meals, consume a lot of soda. And I'm talking like, I call it like full diesel soda, right? They're not messing around with like Diet Coke and Coke Zero. Like it is Coke out of a glass bottle, like full on sugar, right? So they have like a beer, a Coke, or like a glass of wine, a Coke, and a cigarette. And it's like, where's the water, right? I'm like, and that was just very European of their culture. So you see those things and you're like, how do they have health outcomes the way that they do? And I'm not saying that you can judge somebody by their external appearance by any means, but they definitely have a different healthcare system. They definitely have a different agriculture system. They definitely have a different stress management system. They have a different activity level. They have a different work-life balance as well too, right? So I think that we see some of these things that people look at as like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe they do that so much over in Europe. But I think it really does kind of like outweigh all of the good things that they have going for them as well too. So one thing that I definitely noticed was, and again, the US is just like so big geographically, so I get it, but like they have public transportation figured out over there, right? Between like buses or metro systems or trains or obviously like planes or ferry systems, like they have public transportation figured out. So it really just made me aware. Again, does it mean I'm going to start riding my bike to work every day? No, that's probably not realistic in where I live, but it made me keenly aware of how much we rely on vehicles, how much time we spend in vehicles, and that they do a lot of walking, right? Obviously everywhere. And they do a lot of utilization of like public transport versus like owning cars, feeling the pressure to make these car payments, feeling the pressure to like keep up with the Joneses with what car they drive or how fancy it is. Like those types of things. I'm like, I can notice that. That's a little bit of a different pressure, right? The other thing I really noticed was their food supply and food system is very much, that's not the word I was looking for, but it's a lot more fresh. It is not in any way like processed, right? We use that word all the time and can't really think of a better term to put it, but everything feels so much more fresh made, right? It's like, yeah, they may make a lunch out of a bowl of pasta, but that bowl of pasta was like handmade back in the kitchen, right? And not to mention their different agriculture system that doesn't allow certain pesticides to be sprayed. They don't allow glyphosate in their system. So even just like the wheat products that they use and the flour-based products that they use, you hear that a lot of times that of people that struggle with different gastrointestinal issues, they feel like they don't have those issues over in Europe. I would say that I definitely felt that. I didn't necessarily make meals out of bowls of pasta while I was over there to test it out by any means, but because that just like from a blood sugar perspective, like didn't feel super great. But I can tell you like they're getting their food supply turned over very frequently versus you here in America, you see like these like massive food delivery trucks. Like every restaurant pretty much gets like one major food delivery a week. And then it's like more processed food that can just sit in a fridge, right? I don't know how else to describe it, but like even over there, like their chicken feels like real chicken, versus here it's like there's so many places where you go and you could try to live healthfully and you're like, oh, I'm going to order the chicken salad, and it's kind of like rubbery chicken, and it's kind of like, is that even real chicken? Like all of these different types of things that I definitely noticed were like just felt more real, a lot less processed, a lot less chemicals, a lot more focus on just like agriculture and fresh food in general. They also do no plastics, right? And it's like, at first it started to kind of like annoy me, because anywhere you would go that was kind of like fast casual or anything, like if it wasn't like a nice sit down restaurant, they were giving you that like wooden silverware, and it was really thin, and it was it's just their like biodegradable silverware, right? Everything over there is biodegradable. Everything over there is very environmentally friendly. Everything over there is like, it shuts off if you're not using it. Like you're in your hotel room, and it's those energy saving hotel rooms where like, if you're not there to put your key in the slot, your air conditioner's not running, your lights are not on, nothing works, like, unless you're there. So they're very environmentally friendly. So that's kind of, I think, part of their plastics use. But you also just like I said, their soda and everything, like they serve it in glass. Like, they don't use a lot of plastics. And so it's like, I just started to pick up on some of these things that I felt like I know that I understand kind of about the standard American food supply and standard American food system. But like, until you're really in it to see it, it's like, oh, wow. Yeah, this is like drastically different, of that their food passes through far less hands before it gets to like a table situation, right? We have food over here, and I'm not saying they don't have. Did I see a McDonald's? Yes, maybe like one in every city we went to. Some had none at all. Some you couldn't even find a Starbucks over there, right? So it's like, but you can find like little mom and pop food shops everywhere, right? So it's like, you can see how like, yeah, sure, some of the standard American stuff is going to make its way over there, but by far and away, it was way more like mom and pop food shops, cafes on the street corner, and you could see them in the kitchen making handmade pasta, right? And so it's like, that's wildly different than what we're getting served in any sort of like food scenario. Even in their airports, it was like wild to see. You're like walking through, and it felt more like a mall than it did like an airport to me, because it was like handbags and suitcases and scarves and sweaters, and it was like more retail clothing and shopping stores, and it was hard to find a food joint, right? It was like hard, because that's just not what they do. They're like, how do I get fresh food into an airport? Like, probably not going to work very well, right? So that was just, like I said, very eye-opening. And as I started to reflect on that, and I started to talk to some of my clients about that too, they said, they're like, doesn't that just make you angry then at how hard it is to live healthfully in America? I'm like, I could see how someone could have that mindset. I see it as like, wow, that means that I have the opportunity to then reflect and try to make my world similar to that as possible, right? So we got a chance to kind of brainstorm, and some of the things that like obviously are important to me, but I really see them, coming from Europe, is like buying food that passes through less hands, right? So I just had an opportunity to talk to them about like buying local, meeting your farmer, knowing where your food comes from. And it's like, instead of like, we think about how far away a food has gotten from its original form, right? It's like, you look at like a Cheeto, and it doesn't look anything like wheat anymore, right? It's like, how did these two things become the same thing, right? It's like, it's so far away from the original form of food. And so that's where we got an opportunity to really talk about a lot of that with my clients, of like, of all of the foundations that they have in place around like their understanding of food and nutrition. Are prioritizing like buying local? Do they enjoy visiting things like farmers markets? Do they enjoy participating in something like a CSA where you get like community exchange of veggies? Do they enjoy buying from like local farmers or sourcing their meat locally so it passes through less hands, right? It's like, those are opportunities that we all have, right? It's just a matter of us like prioritizing that and seeking that out is something that's important to us and important to our health, right? And then, of course, when you kind of see over there, I was talking with them too about just like conversations that you start to strike up with the locals, right? And so a really big thing that you see over there is they don't even like, honestly, like in the major metro cities that we were in, most of the places are quiet until like 10 a.m. in the morning, right? You like go out on the street and it's relatively quiet. But once like 9, 10 a.m. hits, whoosh, there's like people, right? And so with that, you start to, so then again, I was talking to my clients about that, and I was like, I'm not saying that there's every day that you can make it a point to have a slower start to the morning and not like jump out of bed, rush, stressed, I'm late, I'm running around with my head cut off, like the second our feet hit the floor. There's just such this like rush, hustle and grind mentality here. And over there is just so much slower, right? It's like, oh, the train's delayed. Oh, it's like, I'm not saying that they don't have some of the hustle, because I was in major metropolitan cities, like you see that. But I got to talk with my clients and I'm like, what if there was one morning a week that you could say, I'm not checking my phone, I don't check emails, I don't take meetings before 10 a.m. One day a week. Right? And it's like, see how you like it. What do you do? What do you do with that morning? Does that give you an opportunity to, like I said, have a slower start? Do you get an opportunity to actually like cook breakfast, sit down and enjoy the breakfast, chew your food without rushing through it? Does that give you an opportunity to read or listen to a podcast you've been wanting to do, or exercise and get some time out in the sun? Like, what is it? Like, what does that opportunity afford you if there was one day a week that you decided to like not start your day in a full fluster rush with your alarm going off at 5 a.m., right? So it's just different over there, of kind of seeking some of those types of things. And those are the types of stuff that I've been very reflective with, and things that I've been trying to implement with my clients too, because they come back and they're like, Lauryn, I can't even describe to you how much better I felt, right? And it's not that they weren't having a cocktail. It's not like they weren't having some foods that they enjoy, but they started to just talk about how like, our meal, like I felt satiated, I felt full, and even like the portions were smaller and I was like moving more. And I'm like, that's what it means to like actually understand how to view food and nourish yourself the way that our body understands food. We're getting the nutrients we need. Our body does not count calories. I don't know how many ways and phrases I can say that, but our body is a nutrient sensing system. In order to hack satiety, it has to get the nutrients it needs, right? So anytime we eat real, I hate that I even have to say like real food. Anytime we eat real food, the cells of our stomach are constantly sampling that. And they're looking for something very particular. Like, I'm looking for proteins, I'm looking for fiber, I'm looking for vitamins and minerals, I'm looking for certain types of fats, right? And if it gets the sample that it's looking for, that shuts off fullness, or it shuts off our craving centers. Like, we get that satiety hormone response like we're supposed to. It's when we're out there filling our bodies with food that our body doesn't really see as like nutrients, right? It's like sampling it and it's like, nah, that's not what I envision. Nah, I can't really use that. So all of that goes to storage, right? And so with that, and then it tells the brain, try again. Like, I didn't get what I really wanted. So we have the whole slew of this American culture. It's not just our agriculture. It's not just our food. It's the fact that we don't know how to hack our own hunger and satiety hormones. So now we need like drugs to do it for us. And it's like, oh, here's anorexia in a bottle. Like, oh, an appetite suppressant. I'm like, or we could just figure out like why the heck we're not incorporating and in getting our own satiety signals. Is probably because what we're putting in the body isn't what it's wanting to sample, right? Of course, there's other things that we dig into with clients, like microbiome imbalances, toxin burden, digesting and absorbing these nutrients, all of those types of things. But I just think there's so much to be said for like them actually like sitting down and making meals a priority, right? And not like rushing through and everything's on the run, and they're eat while multitasking 50 different things. They also have, like I said, a food supply that definitely is more, like I said, fresh, more closer to the fuel or to the food source itself. And I really think they prioritize a lot different, like I said, work-life boundaries, a lot less rush. And I'll kind of like wrap this up with just like a story where we were actually getting to talk with a couple different couples. We were at the rooftop restaurant in Athens. You could see the Acropolis in the distance. It was super cool. We got into a conversation with one couple on our right. They were from Grand Rapids, Michigan, and like really cool couple. They had just finished a cruise through Turkey and Greece, which was amazing to share. But like literally probably the second question out of their mouth, it was just such an American conversation, right? I don't know how else to describe it. But like the second question out of their mouth was like, what do you guys do? Right? It's like, we know what they were talking about. They were asking like, oh, what do we do for a living? Right? Like, what's our job? Like within one of the first two questions, right? Of talking to each other. So we share and all of that. Didn't think anything of it. Well, then a little while later, there was a different couple that sat down to us on our left. They were an older couple. After getting to know them, he was like 84. She was, I don't know, in her 70s. They looked freaking fantastic, right? They were originally from Amsterdam. They travel all the time. We ended up having another probably 30-minute conversation with them, and not once did they ever ask us what we did. Right? And like, that's such like, to me, like such a more like European mindset, right? They're not identifying themselves with like what they do for a job. Like, what tax bracket are you in? What car do you drive? How much do you make per year, right? There were all about, it was such a rich conversation. They were talking about politics. They were talking about travel. They were talking about hobbies. They were talking about marriage and life advice, right? And it was just like, I don't know how to describe it, but it was like such an American conversation. And then to have like a European conversation, you start to understand. At a really deep level, you're like, that's it, right? It's like, yes, is it partly their food supply and less, more careful, like I said, and regulatory bodies around like chemicals and plastics and artificial ingredients and processed foods? Yes, it is that 100%. But I think it's also just this total different lifestyle where they aren't like I said, keeping up with the Joneses all the time. It's just like, it is more simple. It's more refreshing in that world as well too. So I won't belabor the point, but it was more just like having these client conversations and some of the reflections that I always have. I always say and tell people, like, when you're on vacation, what are the micro moments of things that your body responded really, really well to? And how can you implement those in your daily life? Like, someone comes back from a beach vacation. They're like, oh my gosh, I slept fantastic. And I never sleep that well. I'm like, why do you think that is? They're like, I spent a lot of time in the sun. I'm like, yes, like our body regulates our circadian rhythm based off of the light and dark cycles of the sun. But here we are in America and we sit under these fluorescent lights inside all day long in temperature controlled environments and don't get outside enough, right? They're like, oh, so you're saying like in my day-to-day life, I need to figure out a way to get more sun. I'm like, yes, right? Or like I said, figuring out a day or two of the week where like I can start my day slower, figuring out how I can manage my schedule so I can take a lunch break and not just work through lunch, right? Or there's so many different micro things that I think are such big learning and aha moments, but we just reserve these things like for vacation instead of actually marrying them into our day-to-day life, right? So really big opportunity there, which then always brings me back with like lots of different, like I said, ideas, inspiration, and all sorts of fun stuff that like makes me want to kind of like revamp what I'm doing as well to, you know, foster how I feel best in my day-to-day reality as well too. So that leads us to some more fun, exciting updates to leave you guys with here today. I wanted to just put this caveat out there to people listening first, individuals that follow Learn with Flow. It won't really make a difference, honestly, to anybody on this platform unless you're a current client of mine. But starting July first, I will be officially breaking off and running my own practice, right? So the Lowdown with Nutrition continues. I will be leaving my clinical practice, which has been an amazing adventure over the course of almost 3 years now. It has provided me such the growth and the confidence that I've needed. And I'm really excited to take my passion for nutrition and functional medicine to a place where it feels like it can like really grow and flourish, versus somewhere where I feel like I've kind of capped out the potential of that particular pond, and looking to really expand my services outside of just that clinical practice. So the Lowdown Nutrition officially has its own business, its own landing place, and I'll be really excited to transition all my current clients. Like I said, most people, the transition, you won't even notice it, but expect to see some fun new websites, some fun new branding, some fun new locations, and all exciting stuff that's going to be happening in the Lowdown world, and I'll keep you guys all posted on that. So continue to follow along on my social media platforms, continue to be here for Learn with Flo. You might just notice this background change a little bit, but other than that, it's going to be just an awesome adventure, and I can't wait to bring you guys like even more resources. So stay tuned, and we'll catch you guys next week.